Hello, and welcome to season 3 of the Unveil podcast. I am beyond delighted to be back and to be bringing you yet more exceptional content. Today is a special one. Today I am joined by Elijah Parker. Elijah is many things, but I'm going to read you his official bio. He is a Gene Keys Guide ambassador and a core member of the Gene Keys team. As head of creative projects, Elijah takes a lead role in the design, operations, and content creation for the Gene Keys website, courses, and online retreats. Talented in both left and right brain modalities, Elijah weaves years of experience in the fields of design, storytelling, event production, and intermodal expressive arts. He has dedicated the last 12 years to integrating the language of the Gene Keys deeply into his life. This has given him a unique ability to transmit profound truths in a spontaneous and elegant manner, sharing reflections from his own personal journey of cultivation and growth, and offering intuitive readings for his clients. Elijah facilitates both personal and group sessions with the Gene Keys for transformation in relationships, activating creative projects, and discovering the gifts inside life's challenges. I have read you Elijah's Gene Keys bio because that's the main focus of our conversation, but I will also include links to his own universe on the interwebs, Fractal Doors, in the show notes. Today's conversation is a sharing circle of two, but a sharing circle nonetheless. Elijah and I have very similar and yet also different experiences with the Gene Keys transmission, and I loved this opportunity to dig into where the Gene Keys is now, where it was almost 20 years ago when I first met Richard Rudd, and all of the things in between. You will hear that Elijah is one of the true mystics, a gentle soul, a true wise wizard of all of his craft. And he also allowed me to speak in this episode and share my experience and my joy and my process with some of these elements of the Gene Keys transmission. Nevertheless, it is also a really practical introduction to Gene Keys. If you've ever had the where do I start, what do I do, how do I get into this thing, this book feels ginormous, this is the podcast which shows you how to begin. And more than that, Elijah gives of his personal experiences and some deep stories which show you not just the words and the language, but the essences of what we're touching on when we delve into the Gene Keys transmission. With that, all that is left to be said is I am delighted to be back, and thank you, if you're listening to this, for rejoining the Unveil universe, and I truly hope that you revel as much as I did in this conversation between myself and Elijah Parker. So I always start my podcast by saying how excited I am for them. But today is an actual, real, genuine, true, joyful, innocent excitement for me. And just before we get into the juicy conversation, I want to explain a little bit to my listeners why. So I met, and people will have listened to the intro, so they know who you are. But I met the Gene Keys when I was 18 years old. So in the dark days of 2004, which is a long time ago for Gene Keys, I met Richard Rudd, and it became a really foundational piece of my healing, my journey. I was really involved in that original sort of tribe that set up around the Gene Keys and that transmission of love. And as with everything in my own personal healing journey, for reasons which you can read within my own Gene Keys, there had to be over that time a necessary rupture. And there was a separation from me to the Gene Keys to all of the things, as with everything. And I've been coming back to it again and again and again, and it never will leave me alone. So I recently refound the Gene Keys through a friend of mine who was like, you really should talk about the fact that you know all of this stuff. So today feels like a really big moment for me because I get to have a conversation with someone who is very, very, very involved with the current team of geniuses who exist around the Gene Keys transmission. So Elijah Parker, welcome to the Unveil podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and to get to weave these different sides of this transmission and to get to meet you. You're an incredible being already. I'm just so delighted to be here. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I love it because we've actually been trying to get this on the books for a while. And it feels perfectly this time today. And for so many reasons. And I'm excited to dig in. But so let's just start with that piece of context. how did you meet the Gene Keys? Where did it come in your life? And feel free to be as lengthy with your life history, or just give us the nuggets around the time when this transmission found you.
Awesome, thank you. I remember spotting this beautiful white book with a dragonfly on the cover and
Yep.
this glowing energy, and I often joke, especially now 12 years into the Gene Keys, of how I immediately said no. I just pushed it away, mostly because as a I have a interesting background in neurofeedback and biofeedback and filmmaking, and I had hippie parents who taught me all the wild things that you can explore in the consciousness realm, and I've been to the other extreme of cynicism, and I looked at this beautiful body of work, and I just said, "I don't want something else that
Mm.
tells me about me, that doesn't feel it's just another more snake oil, more words on the page."
Hmm.
And that cynicism and resistance was exactly the friction that once I started to read it, once I started to engage with it, once I let it in a little bit deeper, it invigorated me because it said, "Yeah, we need integrity. We need truth that comes from each individual, that there isn't just this answer, but it's an awakening process."
Mm.
And that journey ended up being, 12 years of ins and outs, of breakups and reunions, of transformation, and I'm just
Mm.
so grateful that I have this opportunity now to feel like I've been on a grand adventure, and every time I open up the portal, there's another wellspring of wisdom waiting for me, like a friend, like a good tea, like the moon on a beautiful night. There's something special that its cycle goes on with or without me. The lineage
Mm.
of love and wisdom goes on whether or not I want to participate, but it's always a welcome invitation.
Mhm.
So I think that's today my story of how I encountered it.
Mm. It's so fascinating because when I did reconnect to what was happening, it was about the time that the Venus sequence retreat, the first one, was about to start, and all of the what was happening in the world at that time. So it was a couple of years ago, a few years ago now.
Mhm,
Um, but when I looked at it and I looked at the cycles that Gene Keys as a kind of cosmic organism had been through, it kind of exactly mirrored my cosmic organism transformations, and I was like, there's something to this stuff. And I love the people that you meet through
mhm.
it, and all of the wisdom that everyone brings to these beautiful keys. So what I'm going to do is ask the really boring question,
Mhm.
but I want your answer to it, which is, for everyone listening, what are the Gene Keys?
The eternal question.
Good luck, by the way.
What if there were 64 stories that each told our journey from constriction and victimization and pain into light, into beauty, into unity, into compassion? And instead of forcing us into 64 boxes, they were these 64 ways, these keys that open the one door of love. And for me, it becomes a map, it's a compass, it's a way, it's a language that lets me connect with people around the ineffable. But we put these words of shadows, gifts, and cities, and suddenly we can talk about. You'll never know my full journey. You'll never have walked in my shoes. But we have these words that we can touchstone, that we can learn about each other, and that maybe get closer to finally feeling like my story isn't just mine, that my pain's not just mine, and that my potential awakening isn't just a dream, a fever dream, or so far away. That the bard Richard and other people that work with the Gene Keys have articulated something that feels like it was written from my soul. And so I take it and I learn with it, I contemplate it, I work on my own profile, whether it's from the astrology or just opening the book and finding its message. But the Gene Keys is a way of contemplating those codes inside us to awaken the gift inside the shadow.
You've clearly done this before. That was very good. And I love the way of talking about it because it is so linguistic. And sometimes the language is the thing that alienates because people get this big, huge book. And I love that you mentioned the white book, the OG Gene Keys. My original is so like
Oh, of
red
course,
that the
falling
spine
apart.
is like, yes, yes. And you see it and it can feel impenetrable. And so, what I really want to do is support my listeners and anyone who comes across this, either proximally to when we're recording it or decades and eons into the future, to find the accessibility within this transmission. And it isn't all about words, actually. I don't think it's about words at all. But the words are the hook and the way
Mm,
that we can actually communicate. It becomes a language that you can start to recognize.
absolutely.
So I also want to talk a bit about you, though. So you mentioned your intriguing background, and I'd love to understand your journey, like more of your kind of essence, and why perhaps the route that you took gets you to Gene Keys. I'd love just to hear a bit more of anything
Mm.
you'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you. What kinda comes as you said that, what kinda comes is I think when I was a kid, like I said, I did have the amazing opportunity of having parents that were very open and very some of my earliest memories are drawing the tarot cards from the Rider White deck with my dad and my mom, just the
Oh.
archetype and story was a part of my
Mm.
childhood.
Mhm.
And the freedom to experience my dream world, to experience myth and story and archetype. So it wasn't always fantasy over there. It was just a
Mm.
part of my life. So I think later I became a film editor. I went to school for film. I was going on that journey, and story always matters to me. And art magic as a process of expressive art therapy or of intermodal expressive arts to awaken something from inside. So I got to teach in Switzerland. I got to travel into the Northwest to hear people's stories, and on that kind of mysterious, magical journey, I felt like I got to live my myth. I could be this young wizard. I could be on my adventures, and life wasn't so serious. Stuck. I didn't have to go to Hollywood. I knew I didn't want to do that game,
Mm.
and my skills led me to people who wanted to tell their stories. I was like, "Oh, well, I can help with that." And so with the Jinkies, when it became alive in my life, I was living in an art and music community, and so we would use it as a way. We would do improv comedy together. We made cards together. We made paintings together of the Jinkies, and it was an art form that said, you know, what if we could live this myth of our life as art? And you have these secret codes that are just for you. And so we'd lead groups with people and we'd go on adventures together with the Gene Keys. And it just became a part of how we dealt with deep difficulties living in
Mm.
community, how we
Mhm.
dealt with the deep traumas that were coming up in our lives with death and life with sickness and beauty that we wanted to create in a world that's constantly trying to get its teeth into our souls. It was an opportunity to live into something more. So I've taken kind of those left and right brain modalities of my life and wanted to build a structure, a linguistic structure, technologies that can help us remember that we are this feminine infinite wisdom, that we are this art form, art spirit wanting to be free. So I think art, music, community, these are deep parts of my history. And they always, like you said, with Jinkies, you meet very interesting people. So I think it was always a thread kind of moving through these different communities and people that I've met over the years.
Mm. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And my listeners will know, or my long-term listeners will know, that I came to this very much from the human design background. Kind of a totally different way to land at Gene Keys, but also I don't believe that human design is the mechanistic language that everyone thinks it is. I'm very creative with my human design anyway. Um, but people get to this through so many systems, but always through this lens of symbolism and using archetypes to tell stories and recognizing the thematics and the motifs that show up. And I find always that I personally am more connected to the creators, to the poets, to the musicians. I'm a musician. There's a beauty to the frequency sensitivity that I think musicians bring as well, that just creates a different way of dancing through all of this information. And I wonder if you find that your musical background has been helpful in this. Just a question. I find that mine has.
Absolutely, and I think it's a key of awakening. So I grew up, like, in drumline, classic, so I learned music, but I never considered myself a musician, and through this work of improvisation is a part of my art forms now, of the courage to let the innate intelligence of who we are, the innate creativity of who we are, have an access to speak, a willingness of others to actually hold and dance and morph and play with. So I'm really grateful for music because it taught me another language that is all about
Mm,
listening
mhm,
and connecting and tuning in. And the Jinkies is a musical words, it's music, it's a musical text because it's all about frequency and it's all about listening and tuning in. So I think it really did help me awaken both. I think the Gene Keys actually helping awaken my music, my own
mhm,
art, and music reminding me that these structures, these fundamental structures, they're inherent in all people in
mhm,
different ways. We don't all speak the same language. And definitely with spirituality or human design or astrology, not everyone's going to, it's not everyone's tea. And
mhm,
that's completely fine, but they're speaking to these universal archetypes. And I think that excites me. And music is honestly one of the absolute languages of universal consciousness because it is
mhm,
frequency.
mhm, mm. So how has your music and your art changed, would you say? Or is that a big, long arc? Like, what feels like the essence of the difference?
I think when the essence of the difference was handpans, the instrument behind me, that is my main instrument, which are harmony encoded already. So the freedom and boundaries. The boundary is I don't get to play every note on the keyboard. The freedom is I get to always be in tune with the universe. And so that freedom allowed something to move so the flow state enacts. And when ecstasis enacts in the body, now a whole new realm of possibility is open. So for me, obviously I love words as you like I love language. It's another one of my musics. And so by practicing, for example, with the Gene Keys, we memorized every key. We'd race each other to say all 64 cities in order because we're nerds. We love to just devour the information. But now it's so innate in my body that I can bring it just like an improv jazz musician can bring a scale to light. So suddenly I'm more free to
Mhm,
let it be me in every
mhm,
moment.
mhm,
Not that
mhm.
everyone needs to memorize the Jinkies, that is not how it works, but it is.
It's funny how familiar you get with the archetypes, though, isn't it? And I don't know if you have this experience, but you're in conversation and someone who doesn't know anything about it, or you just don't know if they know anything about it, and you're just hearing them, you know, describe themselves in archetypes. And earlier, I was when you were saying about telling people stories, I was like, "Where's the 33 in you?" Like,
High attractor, there you go.
see, so and I love that with the people who are in the know, you can have this shared language, but there is just this universality to it that I've spoken someone's gene keys to them and watched their physiology and their soma transform without them even knowing what I was doing, which is a
Absolutely.
beautiful thing to be able to offer to people.
Mm.
So talk to us about frequency and gene keys. I'd like you to basically explain the spectrum of consciousness now in a way as miraculously as you just did with the 64 gene keys.
I I think that's the essence of what keeps helps me come back and back to the Gene Keys is honestly the simplicity of the shadow is a constricted version of that frequency, a victim state, a repressed or reactive state, but constriction is the right word for me. It's the texture of discordant noises. They're not wrong. Seeds aren't bad for being constricted. They're just the beginning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And the gift is the same energy allowed to breathe with openness, with spaciousness. And creativity loves a little bit of space. Creativity loves a little bit of constriction and enough space to find a way to work with that same energy. So as the frequency, one metaphor, the frequency rises, which is a beautiful piece, but often we get obsessed with rising and getting above and thinking good thoughts and all of that. So instead of just frequency being from low to high, I always think of the torus, that spinning back to center, that every molecule in our bodies is spinning. And there is that spaciousness, that center point around everything. And so maybe the rush of life is our journey from shadow to gift to find these creative possibilities inside the constrictions. But the city, the highest frequency of a gene key, that essence word is the stillness that was there the whole time. That that what if we are held in all directions by that love? What if that was the base frequency? And when you look at frequency geometry wise, these fundamental patterns are inherent across. You don't need language, you don't need religion. The physics of the universe reveal those patterns. For me, that's that Siddhic knowing, is that there is harmony inherent in things. And then there is our human journey, perhaps, of learning where wounds have constricted, where traumas have constricted, and giving them enough voice to become gifts. So that shadow gift city is that spectrum, that frequency shift in the gene keys.
Hmm. And do you find, and this is sparked from a conversation I was having with a friend of mine last night, do you find that what you're coming across is people who are becoming more okay with that dance between shadow gift, all of the juicy essence of humanness, or are you coming across people who are still like on the aspiration train trying to find nirvana? Like what's your experience?
I think it's a really good question. I think that a little bit of both. I think that what I see is that there's a collective consciousness raising where, like, even just seeing like mindfulness over the last 30 years, right? So
Mm,
there's an awareness, a zeitgeist happening around bigger collective energies. So there's more availability for conversations, which is profound for me. And then you look at the generations younger than me and seeing the conversations that they're having around identity, around all of these expressions of life that even would be constricted in my childhood. And so I think
mm,
that there's this incredible evolution happening on large scales. And so in conscious communities or in spiritual communities, or you have kind of two different conversations happening. I think there's always the journey to chase for something. I mean, I was listening to your piece on social media recently, and it's just, I'm not on many social media networks. And so I see the chase that is inside and the creativity. And I see the challenges that we have to face of a culture that now sees itself 24/7 on 1,000 screens and having that awakening neurology.
mm,
So I see a little bit of both, or I see a lot of both continuing to happen.
mm,
But for me, I think the joke, and that's what the Jinkies always kind of reminds me of, the joke of it, is that in my aspirations, in my seekings, in my I don't want to feel this feeling and I want to feel that feeling, that journey has inside it the booby trap that is going to allow me to receive the wisdom of the shadow one way or the other. And
mhm,
so now I do see that consciousness uh, able to have these conversations of, hey, let's be real with each other.
mhm,
Let's get into the juicy nitty gritty details of my pain, of my sorrow, of my joy, of the all of the colors of my life. And I am so grateful that that can be more and more a part of the conversation,
mm,
instead of chasing or losing or trying to leave this body, this moment, this constriction. Can
right.
we invite that love into this body, this
Mm,
constriction, this
mhm.
apocalypse?
Yes. Yeah, and I'm a functional medicine practitioner as well. I'm a clinician, and so I see the biochemistry of this as well as the emotionality of this, as well as the thought frames of this constriction to expansion. It's what are the ingredients necessary in all of these layers of incarnation, if you like, to create that or to facilitate that. And oftentimes it's the being with the constriction that is the ingredient that creates the space to allow for the shift to happen, even from the basics of biochemistry. It's like actually facing into what this thing is the only thing that can transform.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So backing up a little bit, I should actually introduce or ask you to say, what is your role within the whole Gene Keys cosmos? What does Elijah do? And this is not a short answer, people, by the way, so just prepare yourselves.
I recently got one of my dear coworkers. So in the Jinkies and the Team 64, what I love about it is that we're a team of people passionate about the Jinkies, passionate about this work in our lives, passionate about being kind, loving, genius people. So we go through transformations. And I love that you mentioned that you saw the Jinkies go through its transformation, how it mirrored your own. It's what I'm constantly doing. If you are going to work in a transformational field, be prepared for your work to be transformational, right? So It has been a journey of transformation, and I started this journey by giving my art, my designs, my geometries, my videos, my, passion to share it. I still do sessions with people because I love just
Mm,
getting into the magic with people, and over time, got to, meet Richard and be connected and collaborate, and now these days, I recently, got a position, I guess it would be the head of creative projects, which I love. And it was a beautiful little offering. And my coworker joked with me of, "Hey, you haven't changed your email signature yet from head of operations." And I said, "Well, I'll change it when it's true." And so uh, but I thought that, it was a good reminder that actually, I also need to change it so that it will be true. So
Mhm,
I'm grateful to have a little bit of both in my life. I help run the website. I help run all the events. I have designed many of the courses. I help take Richard's incredible content and bring it my own flavor and put it into work. And now I get to run the teams that amazing new designers coming on board and whole teams running the pulse every week and the YouTube channels and all of the things that the media center has to do. I get to work with people. And so I'm a project manager and help from the spreadsheets and the nitty-gritty all the way to the running the events and facilitating them and uh, uh, left and right, as I say. So I kind of have my finger in a lot of what the Gene Keys is at this point.
and everyone who knows me will recognize that archetype because it's sort of me. It's kind of what I do and all of the things that I do. So it's very, and it's, I love the people who can dance between the kind of systems and the people, especially because people like you and I don't tend to see those two as different things. It's just a different system, but it's still people. And it's really magical to have people, and I see them coming a lot now, who really diverge those two modalities and can and understand that yes, a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet, but humans are just sets of widgets too, and set up the circumstances and they will thrive. And that's what I love about watching the Gene Keys. This will possibly make more sense to someone like Richard than it might do you, but the Gene Keys originally was about 8 people gathered around a campfire in the wilds of Devon. Um, and we knew something. I Richard
Mm,
was just a master, and I was very young and very unwell. Like, I was very kind
mm,
of influenced by the energy that I could feel, because I've always been super sensitive, and I just knew that this was truth, and I didn't know how I knew, and I didn't know what I knew. And I was very grateful to be sort of taken in with these original energies. My mother was there as well. It was kind of
yeah.
like a family affair, and to see the empire. And I don't mean that in a negative way, by the way, listeners. I to see the kind of like enterprise that it has become, and the beauty that is in every single offering and every single experience that you can have, from the courses to the retreats to the books. Even I like the proper
Mhm.
physical books, the hard copies of things to read, and all of the beautiful things that have come out. It's a marvel to watch the transformation. But people, it has taken, what is this, we're 20 years later. This is not an overnight miracle, and that's what I love about it, because it's moving at the speed of nature, which is so true to its essence.
It's so beautiful to hear and to feel, and I wanna honor the family around the campfire feeling because for me, one of my jinkies is integrity, it's my core, and the family is still at the fire even now as it's grown,
Mm,
and that moving at the speed of nature is so critical because even though we want to move vastly quicker than we can with the excitement and inspiration of evolution, what it can bring. And yet we are humans with bodies, with
mm,
cells and molecules that do take time to grow into this evolution that's taking place. And I just want to honor that family feeling is so critical to me and to transform with a group of people that I have over the years
mm,
in my own ways and approaching it now. It's as you said, people are spreadsheets. I love that. Of the people are systems, not people are spreadsheets. Don't quote you, misquote you. People are systems, and systems are relationships. And
mm,
so a big part of growth is always about relationship. And I think
mm,
that's what is so powerful is that the teachings themselves are a transformation of relationship from individuals and
Mm.
relationships all the way to the system level. So I
Mhm.
just really want to honor that thread of both family and growth and
Mhm.
relationship inside those
Mm.
systems.
Mm. And it's beautiful, and I do want to sort of stress to everyone that when I say enterprise, I can still sense there's a family at the center of it, and it may be bigger, but it's still a family. And at the time of recording, the Dream Arc retreat's about to begin, and Rosie Aronson and I were like emailing back and forth when I didn't live in America, and it just like to see all of her creativity now being harnessed in the beauty that is some of this artistry. And it's insanely beautiful to me to watch how things have morphed over the time. So I think that's a really good point to say, please could you give us an introduction to the core kind of like sequences, like the
Mhm.
few sequences, and then maybe mention some of the things that are now springing up, because there's more. There's an expanse. It is an expansive universe. So just so our listeners understand what we're talking about, as I want to move us into talking a bit more about the sequences.
Great. Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite parts. If you get your Jinkies profile, you see this map designed with these three different colors and these sequences that are actually all holographically connected. But they, just like astrology and human design, it's a vast world to just get the book, right? You said is impenetrable. It's a lot. And this isn't about having to learn everything. And so that's why I love the golden path as a teaching is it's one sphere at a time, one pathway connecting you into a gene key, into a world that you can learn a little bit deeper about yourself. And in fact, one gene key is enough. One sphere is enough. It's all holographically connected. But they laid themselves out in sequences for Richard as he was exploring and contemplating and receiving that. And in turn, I've now walked through these sequences many, many times
Multiple
myself.
times,
And
yeah.
it's a good journey, right? It's a
Right.
powerful thing to walk through and
Hmm.
get to know the bends of your own river and
Right.
see these connection points. So the sequences are the activation, the first prime gifts, your incarnation cross, these gifts of your genius and discovering your genius by facing the challenges that turn our suffering into our genius so that we can anchor into our core stability, our radiance, and our purpose in our bodies. Because the joke of the gene keys, our purpose is not what we do, but is here is who we are as a human being.
Mm.
So that's the first intro is the
Yeah.
activation.
And everyone comes to you going, "Oh, tell me what my life's purpose is." And it's like, oh, well, it's a journey. So yes, and so for anyone, just as while we're going through this, if you want to get your hologenetic profile, just go to genekeys.com. You can get your free profile, you get all of the information that you want, and even get a little written overview of some of the key gene keys and an audio of your uh life's work, I think.
And
Uh,
very soon we'll even be giving multiple of the keys away in a little journey called New to the Gene Keys. So you'll actually see this of your day of purpose, your day of love, and your day of prosperity, just to give people a little tour of what I'm going to talk about today.
I love that, and I love that because that impenetrableness. I don't find it impenetrable, but it does feel like a "where do I start" question. So the fact that that's coming is just awesome, because people can really get that osmosed energetic without just seeing all the words and going so that's great. That's so genekeys.com is where you can find profiles and do all of that sort of stuff. So that's the activation sequence. What comes next?
And then your purpose sphere at the bottom of your chart is the activation, but then it turns inward even deeper. And like nested dolls, it begins to go even deeper into what's called the Venus sequence. And when you look at the chart, I always think of the purpose at the roots of my being, roots of my tree. And this is the inner plumbing, the sap moving through the inner parts of my tree. And the
Mm-hmm.
Venus sequence is all about relationship, even deeper, that our highest purpose comes alive and is revealed in relationship, not in seeking the other, but in revealing the beloved, revealing the natural genius within, and learning our triggers, our defense systems, our incarnation codes when we were young and learned conditioned patterns from 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21. It's a journey of recapitulation of remembering these parts of ourselves and seeing the potential love that's in there of when love is able to see through my eyes, how does that trigger become my catalyst? How does that defense system become my dance? How does my innocent love in my body awaken until I can have the courage to look all the way to the core wound, to turn, touch it tenderly, and see these patterns that might have flavored my whole life, might have flavored eons of lives. Because I chose in that moment of conception when I broke away from unity that I would take this shadow, I would take this challenge with me and let it become my medicine. So the Venus sequence guides us like a stream of water all the way back to that core wound, that core of us. And the whole way is filled with grace, with seeing our wounds with graciousness and gentleness and patience.
Mm. Hmm. Yes. And for those who've listened to my Gene Keys podcast, people know that I had a Venus sequence reading from Richard before it was even the Venus sequence. It was off a human design chart. Like it was reading all the things, and it didn't include the attractor field or the life's purpose at that point. But the core of those energetic patterns play out. And we have a very old tape recording. It's actually sitting there on my desk of that session, an epic thunderstorm filled day in the Oxford countryside in England. And it's like you can feel the Venus and Mars energy in the room. It is like, and you can hear the thunder and the rain on the recording. And I mean, of course, I thought my journey was complete at that time, and I had many, many years left to go, and yet more. But there's the things that I find in the Venus sequence today, the translation that makes it more kind of like understandable. It's yeah, it's a really juicy kind of dive into the inner layers and the inner fascia of your own kind of relational style. So my personal favorite sequence, if I'm allowed to have one
Me too, for
of
100%. I am
those.
just I am just electric getting to feel all these hidden gems of you. That's it's so beautiful to feel.
Yeah, the secret history. Well, and I love it, and I love that I feel so connected to the Gene Keys as a transmission, as a everything, without needing to be part of it necessarily. But it just shows me how much it's a living, breathing thing, which is a terrible word to use, and I've lost all words. But there, it just is. It's such a if it grabs you, you are designed to be on this fractal in this ecosystem, diving into all of this consciousness exploration together. So it's kind of like I never really left, even though many ruptures and changes in the time between here and then. So yeah.
I think that's so beautiful, and I think it's a big part of that transmission, that fractal, as you said. Like when you called into that fractal, it's I think that we have a lot of wounding, not just us individually here, but a collective. We got
No,
plenty of that
I'd
too.
concur with that one too. Yeah, yeah, tons of that.
Collectively we have this wounding about belonging, about community, about connection, about the other, about the thing, and I've been shattered by this thing called the gene keys. I have been ruptured 100 times over in my life, and it's not just Richard or a business, and it's not just even a collection of teachings. It is a transmission, it is a vibration that calls people before they even know the words or the names, and honestly don't even need to know the words and the names. And
Mhm,
I want to honor that fractal, because that I think is the juice. And as the Venus even becomes the pearl sequence, that is this journey between these two sequences, is I go so deeply into my personal healing that I am a part of this living wisdom, that I am this library of living wisdom. And now my poisons, my wounds, my traumas, they become my medicine, my vocation, my unique genius I get to give back to the world. And the Pearl sequence speaks to that, of now we give it back and we plug it into the larger culture, and it grows and it connects into our service and into collective consciousness. So it's not just one community. I always have to remind people of, like, it's not the Gene Keys community. There is no the community. There's no
mhm,
one body of, there is a fractal and multiple fractals weaving together. And all the Pearl sequence really describes is, what if you could tune in to the frequency of the fractal that is calling you just as you are calling to it, because it plugs us into the symphony of our service.
mm,
And that I think is why it's prosperity, is it's not just making money, though that may be a part of it. It is
Mhm.
breathing into the prosperity and rejoining your life's work with the collective.
Mhm. Mm. Beautiful. Thank you for that explanation of the central three sequences, because it really does feel like there is a sense to the sequence and this order of the sequences, and everybody wants to know, firstly, life's purpose, and then what should I do for a job, and it's like it's not really about any of that, and selling that can sometimes be complicated. But that weaving of personal, relational, collective is
Mm,
such a transformational journey. Is the wrong word for this, actually, totally the wrong word. It's a constant overlayering and weaving and navigating one's own kind of reality, actually. um,
mm,
so, and the thing about community and belonging, it's so funny to hear you say that, because it's obviously so true. And I remember one of the reasons why I had to distance myself from both human design and gene keys way back when is because it was so uncool. It was like you were the world's weirdest hippie. And now I live in Austin, Texas, where it is my party trick that someone goes, "Oh my God, Victoria does human design and jinkies. Oh my God, where is she?" So the transformation that has happened in the collective consciousness creates the sense of belonging. Like, to me, jinkies was way ahead of its time. Of course,
mhm,
not, but in the bigger, broader landscape. And now it gets to be kind of not just cool, but actually accepted. I
mhm.
work with proper medical people these days, and we are bringing human design and gene keys into medical therapeutic settings. And I never thought I would be able to do that. So I think the evolution's been such a such a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Hallelujah. I just celebrate that so much
Mhm.
that even in this part of your chapter of your lifetime, you've gotten to see that evolution. And
Yeah.
I just really want to honor you for carrying the wisdom to the transmission, the things that ignited your cells to know right from the beginning, to carry that all the way through these modalities is profound. And I hope that the children and the children and the children will keep growing up in more and more opportunities where not only is it whether it's cool or not cool, that doesn't matter, that it can be a base foundation of loving kindness that we can share through tools that work. I think it's a profound, gift to see that transform. Mm.
Mm-hmm. I want to help our listeners receive a transmission of yours, is what I want to do. So, what I'd like for you to do, if you're willing, is to choose some of your personal gene keys. They can actually come from your sequences, or just ones that have been just so juicy for you to sit with and contemplate, and just take us on a dance through some of your own personal navigation, because I think sometimes that personal story helps us translate some of this conceptual, well, these sequences and this stuff and this direction and this. That's what I'd love for you to share with our listeners, if that is something that you're up for.
Yeah, thank you. It's a beautiful opportunity. Mm. It's funny, the first one that kind of, you know, one of the things I've done in my life is we set a labyrinth of our golden path so you could stand in these different spheres. And why I love these symbols and these tools is like when I'm in crisis, when I'm in trouble, and I forget a lot of forget my breath, I forget my, all the tools. That there are these memories, these moments, and I'm a very mythical person, so there are literally these magical items that will just appear inside my consciousness and remind me. And one of them is the fires of desire. So Jinki 30 is the clinging fire. It's my IQ in the Venus sequence. It's places of trigger, it's places of catalyst, it's the potential for my own Venusian love to be fully awake and alive here now. Or the absolute deepest triggers that piss me off or throw me off or destroy me and then cause me to go into my defense patterns and things like that. And desire is such a powerful thing because I want to want. I don't want to want. That it's not holy to want. No, but I want what. And this journey of desire is in goes to lightness and then eventually to rapture in the gene keys. So holding my desires lightly. So I'm a big I am a binger, right? So if I give myself, okay, 3 days I get to do whatever I want, I will burn through what I want. I will consume it all or I'll go to the ends and then I'll fast for like a week. You know, if it burns itself out, it's
Mm.
experienced itself. And then in the end, this jinky is all about experiencing life. It is consuming the data of life. Now, this doesn't mean give in to every desire, but it means learn from the teacher of my desire. So suddenly, this teacher is saying, ooh, you want that food, but you're on a fast right now. There is more ecstasy available in the folds of this moment than will ever be attained by eating that thing or smoking that thing or running up that mountain.
Mhm.
And I don't think I would have ever touched that ecstasy if I didn't burn through the pains of that desire. So this gene key, what it taught me, this powerful mantra it gave me is that the gold of who we are will never burn, will never melt. So take rapture in the burning, for it is the layers unfolding. And this burning of my desires, if I held the love inside me, it still burns. It doesn't take away pain. It doesn't take away the suffering, but it allowed me a chance to actually witness the rapture, to witness that I'm transforming something. So I was sitting in my room and my partner had decided that she was going to be making love to someone else and that this was a journey that I didn't really have much of a choice about and I was left in the same house listening to the sounds of ecstasy of my partner with someone else crumbled on the ground in my floor, just holding myself in burning rage, watching this trigger of desire, this trigger of this catalyst. And the level of love that I discovered inside my cells, inside myself, freed me from the pain that was all attachment based. Now, I still felt all the pain, but
Mm.
I wasn't clinging, which is the clinging fire of this key. I wasn't clinging and identifying with that pain. I was experiencing sensation. And that has been my go-to is when I am in absolute pain. I've had very difficult health stuff come up. I've had a very difficult car accident. When I experience pain, pain is sensation, and sensation is information. This is just the universe telling you you are alive and to pay attention.
Mhm.
So suddenly that pain became this fire of love inside myself. And I witnessed more love awaken and was able to love the people in my life, to love them, but to stay grounded. And this was my beloved coming alive inside these wounds of desire.
Mm.
So it didn't take it away. And I think that's always my lesson at the end of the day with the Jinkies. It never takes it away,
Mm.
but it reveals that this teacher of that shadow is fuel, is opportunity for more ecstasy, not to leave it, but actually to embrace it and see the wisdom of it. And now, while I still would be triggered if my current wife was to choose that, that doesn't take away the potential wounds there. But I know that I can hold my own desires with deep lightness. I can hold my own desires inside that rapture, and I can choose. I don't have to dive into every external version of my desire in order to experience that rapture within. So
Mm.
that's a little meandering of a story, but it's some of the pieces that that IQ kind of taught me as it opened.
That's so beautiful because sometimes people, especially in the Venus sequence, they go straight for the core wound. It's like, just tell me what the wound is. Like, I'll work with it. But there's so much beauty in all of these, and I find it hilarious. It's a good job I find it hilarious, and you'll understand when I tell you what I'm about to say. I have third lines in my IQ, SQ, and EQ. I have, they're all third lines, and my personality sun is the 33. So in shadow, forgetting, and I always forget that I have third lines in my Venus sequence, and I do this like avoidant dance in so many ways. And then I remember and I'm like, oh, oh, oh. And it's this whole kind of beautiful chaos. And I'm not a very chaotic person. Like people who know me as very structured, very put together. It helps that I'm British in America. It's like Victoria's got her shit together. That's just a thing. But this whole like haphazard chaos running around frequency inside me that I have to remember is the humor and the kind of the humor in that third line and the ability to laugh at oneself that I love. And I would like everyone listening to know that I've literally just used one gene keyword. Everything else was about energies of behavior patterns. And it can be that simple. We don't need to get bogged down in the language, but I do find it remarkable how much is in each one of these little nuggets, these pearls, not just the pearl, but all of these pearls of these keys.
So beautifully said. I
It's
love to feel your inner chaos of these line threes and the
so
adventure of that.
hilarious. And I love what you said earlier, actually, about, if you're going to work in a transformational business, expect your career to be transformational. I actually feel very soothed internally by a lot of my recent chaos that has been actually manifest on the external plane. So thank you for that. So, what I'd also love for you to explore with us is something from the either the life's work or the pearl, something that feels more material to people. If
Mhm,
it feels material to you, if it doesn't, then that's a stupid question. But just some kind of access point that has also inspired you to maybe in career or in prosperity or to think about that differently, just to give people a different kind of flavor.
mhm. Yeah, there's an interesting thing of my in my Pearl sequence, I have a line 1 vocation. So this going down into the roots, into the depths, and being in my own work study, my hermit cave, and uh, dealing with the systems from the bones of it. But my culture, where my medicine then plugs into, is a line 5, is these larger systems, the shadow of the empire, of the growing empire that could take over and consume, but also the incredible efficiency that when practical magic is implemented into the world, it can take complexity and universalize it into guidance for collective growth, for guiding humanity into these directions that can actually expand just beyond our siloed networks, but into whole societies. And so to see that was like a challenge of like, well, how do I go from little line 1 in here to this big line 5 out there? And also not get into the ego of I'm destined to be in this big line 5 impact. And my jinky there is in the culture is jinky 42 of expectations, detachment, celebration. So I've watched in my life and for my prosperity to grow, I have to face these expectations and face the death of that jinky to watch these cycles ending and pay attention, but celebrate the good, the bad, the ugly, the destruction, the birth, the death, and not try to expect what that empire, what that society, what that societal impact is gonna be. And what it taught me was the mycelium, right?
Mhm.
This deep like, for me, the line 5 and it's one of its beautiful ways is to honor the mycelium, honor the connectivity that we actually have, the impact that individuals do have on culture, and also the continued intelligence of I don't know every person that I've impacted and how that might have impacted their
Mhm.
family and the people that they touch. We are fractal. And so suddenly now I could celebrate, you know what, if I've had one good day with Victoria, and if either of our lives were blessed from that day, from that moment, it could bless the next person, it could bless the next person. And that fractal impact inspires me way more than building some empire with its flashy lights and it's got the big sign.
Yeah.
And so some of my keys are about that dance of that balance, and for me, it was giving myself permission that my skill set can be in the production room, and to trust and let go and let it go out into the world and let it evolve and mutate and go out in those other ways.
Mm.
Mm.
Beautiful. And I love that you shared that specific example because the link between those two examples, as I heard it, is this detachment. And I don't mean that in the sense of just the gene key. I kind of mean this like this constriction, as you were speaking to earlier. That's the archetypal attaching, clinging, attachment needs to be this way, all of that kind of stuff. It's all the same energy. It's the same heart of like, am I gripping? Or am I actually just allowing it to flow? And so I love that both of those examples that you gave contain that same essence, even though we were in different areas of the hologenetic profile and all those sorts of things.
Mhm.
Okay. So one final question in this sort of dance of stuff. What's your favorite gene key?
26.
Okay, now you got to tell me why, especially since I've just told you all about my line threes, because I'm going to enjoy this answer.
I don't know, no, I guess it's obviously true, I said it. 26 is pride, as the shadow, to artfulness as the gift, to invisibility as the city. And it's one of my favorites about that detachment kind of feeling that you're talking about because pride, I want to puff up and I want to be this thing and I want to be seen as that thing. Or I cave in and I'm terrified of being seen. Please don't see me. Let me just be invisible from more of a shadow. And artfulness is we all want to be manipulated. Music is manipulation. Movies are manipulation. Love is manipulation. We're beings of drama. And artfulness recognizes that there is a skill there of manipulating this moment and hopefully in the kind of shamanic seductress route of like guiding one deeper into oneself, guiding one deeper to harmony. But artfulness is the careful, well, hopefully careful, skillful means by which to use this Maya but invisibility as the city is the teacher, these sacred tricksters, that they don't look for their name in the credits. They don't need to be seen to be of influence in this world. And I use that because I would rather be invisible laughing with the angels, knowing that this great game is afoot than I would to be on some pedestal with all of the pain and shame and guilt and grief that comes with that power. And so it's a dance for me because power is a dance. It's hard for me to come on these things as beautiful and wonderful as you are. And I love this conversation. I don't like to be seen. But I love to be of service. I love to be of impact and I love art. So
Mhm.
may we find that balance where we can let go of the ego that needs to be controlling, that needs to be known, but also still have an ego worth becoming invisible, ego worth giving up, an art that we can craft of our life that is a gift into the world. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I just so to tie the links together for the listeners as to why I mentioned the third lines, that whole sacred trickster, often the court jester archetype in that 26 is all about that kind of. I always think of it as having a third line energy. Obviously it has all the lines and anything can manifest, but it's just that kind of like genuine innocence, but with a deep uh capacity to teach, as you said, a capacity to be so subtle, but yet so obviously manipulative. I have a 26. I'm a 2644.
Yep.
It's kind of, yeah, it's part of me. So yes, I get it. I want to just return while we're kind of like just take us from the lightness into the darkness.
Mm,
You mentioned some physical stuff, some
mm,
physical challenges. And I always get very cautious of having these kinds of conversations, which look like two people rich enough to talk about
yeah,
words all day. And I know that I faced incredible challenge and trauma, physical near death experiences multiple times. But I wonder what your response is to people who say, well, this is kind of a worried, well, ability to talk about this stuff. Where do you sit with that kind of disparity between the ability to even think about this stuff and some of the travesties and the traumas in the world?
absolutely. I think it's a critical conversation and something that is maybe a bit a part of that invisibility piece too of there are a lot more conversations that I also want being had on the collective stage and sometimes these conversations take up more time than maybe they are even should be. So to be honest that is a part of the dance inside me because I cannot deny that the work that I have done through things like the Gene Keys and things that have touched me, touched my soul, they have given me absolute real tools in my life to face some of the hardest things that I have ever faced. And they have taught me I do not wish death on anyone. I do not wish disease on anyone. I do not wish pain on anyone. I do not wish oppression on anyone. But my experiences of those things, I have discovered greatness inside me, and I am a better man because of the death and the pain, because of the forgiveness that I've had to ask for the pain that I have caused in others, for the journey of repair that I've had to go through by seeing my shadows so intimately, so really, to actually look in the mirror at some of those places and then be able to communicate about them, have given me something that I compassion, have given me another piece of compassion. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, when I've been in the worst states of physical disease, I knew that there was someone praying for me in the grand scheme of things. and I found that compassion that was untouched by my immediate pain, and I'm very privileged to have experiences that now my cells know that. So if there's anything that I can do to resonate that frequency that I know on a cellular level
Mhm.
that there was compassion in my pain,
Mhm.
then hopefully that can resonate and be available to someone who may not have had that held for them before, may not have had someone pray for them in that way before, may not have had someone reach out a hand, and hopefully to inspire passionate action, compassionate action, to also lift hands quite literally, to give food quite literally, to give opportunities for health quite literally to those that haven't had it before, not
Mhm.
as a pity, not as a giveaway, but as a sharing
Mhm.
of the incredible privilege that has happened in my life. Even though I didn't grow up with money, I am very, very privileged to be of where I am right now. So
Mhm.
may the seeds of my own journey allow me to have kindness in every interaction that I have. I do think that that's worth it. I do think that that is impactful. And that's what I try to strive for inside this balance, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense, and I think I do too. I shouldn't relate the gene keys as impractical because I genuinely believe that the gene keys saved my life. Like, I don't know how my life would have gone had I not met Richard kind of about a year into my illness, which would then go on for a further decade. But I always had people commenting on how I was like relating to it in a different way. And I don't think I had the ability to even perceive at the time that it was because I'd been given this enormous gift of being exposed to a whole different universe of just feeling the meant to be ness of some of the things, to the acceptance of the potential of my own death. And that was stimulated by a conversation that I had with Richard. And it's one of those kind of, I don't know whether I'm terribly unlucky in my life or terribly lucky or both at the same time in equal and opposite measure. And it doesn't sort of matter. I try to orient to all of the chaos and all of the problems with, I don't know that I can do anything about that thing over there because it's a really big problem to fix, and I'm not. I'm good, but I'm not that good. But what I can do over here is just vibrate this thing that I kind of have a sense of, and often I lose, and sometimes I have to find it again. But I know it's there, and hopefully that is enough. Does
Mm.
something. So I kind of think we arrive at the same position in some of that.
The good news is if there are more opportunities for each individual to shine that out, then it can touch someone in who knows where, and it doesn't even need to spread. It's there's a power in that resonance that you just spoke, and I think
Mm,
that if every individual had the courage to find out what piece of them do they need to resonate, and that's it, to simplify all the other distractions and be that thing authentically, lovingly, how much of an opportunity would that give to someone who does not have the same gifts that I do in this moment?
mhm,
And can we actually shift some of those systems, those
mm,
push the needle on some of these bigger systemic issues that are
mm,
caused not by individuals, but are fed by individuals?
mhm,
And thus, individuals can feed that system and push that needle in a different direction. And conversations of loving authenticity and facing into those challenges, that is something that we do need collectively, and we do can help push that needle.
mm. And so if someone listening to this is like, "Oh, I want to find that thing that I can vibrate with authentically," and where should they start, Elijah? And you can just say go to the Jinkies website, but if there's like a meditation or a contemplation or a mantra or something that you think is always something that people can grasp onto, what would it be?
Allow, accept, embrace. It's one of the greatest gifts the Jinkies has given me, to allow this moment as it is, and then discover how we can bring that shadow in for tea and embrace it. And
Mm.
so, a great way to play with that is have tea once a week. Join the Pulse. It's a free newsletter. You get a free, beautiful audio by Richard, 20-minute English voice bard, just take you on a journey of Shadow Gift City. Have yourself a cup of tea, a cup of water, whatever your little slice of heaven, to take a moment every week to just allow, accept, embrace a little bit deeper. And these archetypes awaken on their own. And we have to have the courage to be gentle and patient with ourselves on that journey. So
Mhm.
if we create more pauses, if we create more space for that to happen, the miracles are abounding in those spaces. They can percolate inside those spaces. So
Mhm.
that's my great theater is I love the pulse. I love this weekly love letter to these
Mhm.
gene keys.
I do too, and I love it because it keeps me up to date with what's actually happening in the transits. Because I'm a busy person, I don't have time to keep track of what's going to happen in the planets next, and I don't remember the order of that wheel. I just did. I've been studying this for 20 years, and I'm still not in my system. So, but it's what I love about it is it's a reminder to connect to the global consciousness
Mhm,
frequency, not just the mess that you're living in. And yes, you can watch those archetypes show up in your world, um, but it's actually it's kind of keeping you in perspective with some of the stuff that you can hear in your friends' narratives or on the news. It's like you know the global soup that we're kind of swimming in, and the pulse is totally free. And that audio, by the way, people don't always realize this. It's not just Richard reading the Gene Keys book,
mhm,
because that would be a lot. It's a whole extra transmission. It's actually the 64 ways book.
mhm.
So super awesome. And you're right. I get a lot of compliments on my British accent, but Richard gets so many on it. So it's always an opportunity. And honestly, the thing that I've also found is if you listen enough to Richard and really become in the transmission, his voice becomes a kind of meditation on itself. So you can put it on the background, not even listen to the words he's saying, and it just gets you into the state of like coherence that they call it with the all. So
Mhm.
it's worth doing. So yes, for sure. Um, one other thing that I wanted to touch on is just the dream arc. I know that this is too late for the retreat, but I do want to give people a taste of okay, if you don't want to sit and allow and any other things like that, and you don't want to sign up to the pulse, how can people be in their world in a different way, which might help them have a different route in founded on the dream arc?
Beautiful. And the Dream Arc, even if the retreat isn't happening, it'll continue to be available. And one of the things I love about the Dream Arc is it's an invitation into that right brain, that creative part of ourselves that we're isn't I read this funny meme the other day. Isn't it weird that we all go into this semi-coma, and have amnesia the next morning that we all experience this profound thing.
Hmm.
And in this dream world, our consciousness is playing with life, with ourselves, with our memories, with the natural world. And one of my shamanic teachers said that, in the beginning, the truth came and told itself plainly to all, and we were unable to understand or digest it. And so truth wrapped itself in the animals and in the plants and in these symbols. And so the dream arc is about reawakening to that natural intelligence and the wisdom of nature. So spotting the bird and the mosquito isn't just bothering me. It's an agent, it's a keeper of the fear gates of provocation. It helps to remind me a deeper element of life. And so there's 192 creatures in the Dream Arc Codex, and Richard's incredible words, bringing them alive, and from different traditions and stories, a synthesis of wisdom keepers from all over the world, as well as the natural wisdom of just observing these animals and nature and seeing not only their mythical origins, but also how they're coming to you today, like my butterfly guardian that's just constantly out my window. It is
Hmm.
on a deep level helped me through this transformation of a new home. So, Dream Arc is about creativity, about dreams, but also about animals, and it is no numbers and lines. It is a much more a wild route into intuition, and is an incredible journey that is Rosie is just filled with art and beauty and woven hundreds of contributors from all over the world. So
Right.
it is its own whole. It's as big as the Golden Path and the Gene Keys, and it's
Yeah.
just beginning. So if you
Mhm.
are drawn to the creative side, I think it's a pretty magical journey.
Yeah, and it is really relevant to say that the dream arc is something that could take you years and years and years and years and years and years and years. Like it is a constancy and it will change. And it's so funny. I have never totally been connected to animals. I kind of have them as symbols, and there was a few key ones, but it is this crazy synchronicity of the more you pay attention to something,
Mhm.
the more you notice the things. And I shared with you just before we press record that I was just leaving my office to come back to record this, and a great big huge raven landed on the tree outside my office window. And that doesn't happen. Like, that's, I live in Austin, Texas. So this is not a thing. And it was amazing. And to feel like, oh, that shows me something. It gives me a something to go and look at. What's the raven? What gate is it? What's it doing? What's it trying to say to me? But
Mhm.
more than that, there is so much um, ancient mysticism woven into the dream arc, and all of these kind of animal things. So it's definitely worth exploring if you're drawn to that. And one final thing I must say, because my mother told me to say this, is that even though I have the British accent on this podcast, Elijah does far better than me in tea, because I don't like tea. I really can't stand it. It gives me a phenomenal headache. But you're a tea person, aren't you? Where does this come from, and what's your favorite tea? What's the tea thing about?
I was blessed in Portland to sit with Master Poe. He was a dear friend and a treasure to this world, and he taught about these old ancient teas that these deep rooted beings that are stellar antennas. They pull in the stars, they pull in the seasons, and these older tree material. They speak a different language than our monocropped hyper grow for money, grow for speed, grow for pest, these are incredible grandmothers and grandfathers that are ancient, and I'm blessed to have access to some really well, I work hard to pay for access to some very
More
precious
expensive
teas.
than gold leaf.
But so my favorite tea is unfortunately expensive, but the practice, what it brought me to was presence, was
Mm,
to pour tea with presence, with intention, with listening to this tea that is drinking you. So Poe at Heaven's Tea, incredible teacher. We even just drink water in different cups and in different pots. It's the first in tea school to taste that, like you said, when you bring your attention to something, the magical portals open up. And so allowing ourselves to, even if it is a tea bag, to pour it with intention, because this tree gave of its leaves that we are
mm,
now imbibing maybe
mhm,
years afterwards. And they each have a treasured song. And but my favorite is called Emerald Heart, and it is a lubao from the 90s, and it is a incredible earthy, rootsy, fungal floor energy that just allows me to set my day with the wisdom of the trees in the forest, and to drop into the belly. And that's why I love tea.
Maybe I've been doing tea wrong. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe I don't just hate tea. It's like I'm doing it wrong kind of energy.
I'll have
I'm
to
sure if
send
I
you a
spent,
little care
yeah.
package. We can
Well, I think when you spend hundreds of dollars on anything, it kind of does taste better. Like, it's just the law of how things work. So, not always, actually. I have to say that's not always the case. But oh, Elijah, I have so enjoyed spending time with you and just sharing and having a back and forth. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you're like, oh, I really wish I could talk about this, or I really want to say this? Is there anything that you would like to, as we come to a close today, just leave our listeners with?
all I wanna really say is thank you. You are I don't know all of your body of work very well yet, but I love to meet beings, and your being is brilliant and shimmering, and I can experience you through this way, and it's just an honor to get to share. And thank you for giving all of your community the gift of you, that artfulness of you and the storyteller of you, and a huge thank you to Richard for bringing us together, and that you continue to invite me here. It is a real honor and just joy. So thank you.
Mm. Oh, well, thank you for all those beautiful words, Elijah. I will let you in on a little secret. I waited for quite a while before I reached out to you because I knew I wanted to speak to you on the podcast. I knew I wanted to have your energy, your wisdom. And it was actually going through the guides program. And you did so many of these like long explorations. And I think one of them you apologized for it being so long. And I was like, no, this is awesome. This is like the best ever. And so it was that kind of stimulated my courage, I think it was, my kind of sense of, oh no, I really believe like my podcast belongs to have some association with not only the Gene Keys community but yourself. So thank you for taking the time for bearing with my reschedules, your reschedules, all of the things that we've done to get to have this little dance together today. And send all of my love back to the Gene Keys family. And
Mhm.
I know my listeners will have found such value in this. So thank you very much.
Mhm. Thank you.
I want to reiterate my deepest thanks to Elijah Parker for joining me and for indulging me and allowing me to share parts of my story and my experience with the Gene Keys as I interviewed him. As always, every link that you need to get your own hologenetic profile is in the show notes, and everything that you could possibly want is at genekeys.com, where you can dig in and find more. And if you're wanting easy access to some of this information, go to YouTube and check out the Gene Keys channel. There is so much available for free for you to become involved and immersed in this transmission. And I know that if it's calling to you and speaking to you, then you would be very much welcomed in it. Okay, with that, all that's left to say is I shall see you very soon on the Unveil podcast.